Like my love of children. Hey, it is Monday, April 29th, advanced class. If you're looking for the regular class one, there isn't one because they're taking a test today. Advanced-wise, we're reading a book. Getting into Princess Bride, you gave me back your gospel book. Let's see, from there to that. Here's where also I mentioned at one point, some of you guys are going to start re-examining your desire to be in advanced next year. This is part of that re-examining of your desire to be in advanced next year. This book is what gets you prepared for next year. It is a much tougher reading level. Well, not too much tougher level, but as far as the amount that you're going to have to read and be able to get through is getting you guys ready for 8th grade. Out of curiosity, how many of you guys are familiar with the movie? Yay. How many of you guys are not familiar with it whatsoever? Also, yay. If you're not, you're good to go either way. If you're familiar with the movie, the book just goes much more in-depth and in detail and stuff like that to try and help you out with it. As far as the bell work goes, time-wise, because they ate up one of my days, because you're not going to see me tomorrow because of iLearn. You won't see me again until Wednesday, and then Wednesday is going to be a short class period. I'm going to try and get through as much as I can before I let you guys see the book. We're going to have to skip that. What I am going to do this, starting Wednesday, those of you who have points, you get a chance to start spending your points. And so I'm going to start bringing in food. And so each day over the next week, month or so, I will have a different food item you are more than welcome to spend. You just cannot spend more than 50 points on any day that I might be spending things, and you cannot go below 30 points, which means for like some of these items, you're going to have at least 60 points before you can buy a thing. If you're below 60 points, that's fine. It just means you're not one of the rich kids who gets to buy things. If you're one of the rich kids, then you're going to get a chance to buy things with your points. The bottomy part is for those of you who don't want to spend your points. If you want to spend 75 points towards the end of the year, then you get to permanently write on my podium where you get to have your name on there forever and ever, and it'll stay up there for as long as I'm teaching, and so you get to have that. If you end the year with 100 points, that's what gets you to write on the Century Club as an 8th grader and get your name permanently added to my wall over to there. All you have to do is have 100 points on the very last day of school and you're good to go.
Exactly.
So that's or more. Good job. So if you're under 100, you're going to be out of luck. Other than that, if you're over 100 points, that's just bragging rights because on the list, I rank you by your number of points. The more points you have, the higher you are on that list. If you have the most points, then you get little asterisks and stars next to your name and stuff like that because you get to be the very tippy-toppy person. So that's things coming up. Wednesday, my goal is I have little things of Pringles, like those little individual cans that you get to have, or little cuppy things. I think they're similar to the ones they have at lunch. Do they sell Pringles at lunch?
No.
Then they're not like the ones they have at lunch. If they sold Pringles at lunch, it'd be like the ones they have at lunch. And so I think that's the first things I'll give you guys a chance to start buying coming up on Wednesday. I just don't want to take time to do it today. Alright, with Princess Bride, yes, I'm aware it is a really big, long book. It is also a book that goes by really quickly. For the reason I'm not letting you guys hold on to it is for those kids who don't hate reading, it's a book that goes by really, really quickly. And so there's certain things I want to be able to get to with you. Much like in Outsiders, the throwing kids out the window scene and the getting to stab a kid with a knife scene, there are scenes in here that I get to look forward to the entire year. One of them is hopefully coming up this week if we get a chance to get to it. It is one of those memorable things that happen in the book, and so I want to be able to get a chance to get to that with you. And so we're going to put off you being able to read on your own until next week, and that's when you guys get a chance to go on your own. With this book, it is a satire, which is what they're talking about behind me up there. A satire is where you mock or make fun of a thing. And so, as in, let's go with, different than a retelling. What Disney does, like with these movies, The Beauty and the Beast, or with the new Lion King that's coming out, those are not a satire. That is where you're just retelling a fairy tale or retelling these kids' books. A satire is where you make fun of the things that are in there. You exaggerate it or you flip things. Like in a fairy tale, instead of having the ogre be a bad guy, the ogre becomes a good guy. And instead of the prince being the good guy, the prince is short and dumb and stuff like that. As an example, that would be Shrek. Shrek is a great example of satire, where they make fun of a thing. There's also a movie called Hoodwinked, which is along the same lines. Agreed. Hoodwink was a genius movie. But it took the idea of Little Red Riding Hood and then turned it into like a comedic detective story. And so that's an example of a satire. If you're into movies, there's a movie called Spaceballs. Spaceballs is a satire of Star Wars and those kind of things. It goes along those same lines.
Oh, that was such a bad
That's
movie.
what Princess Bride is. Princess Bride is a satire of fairy tales, but it's also a satire of a true story. It's built around these two countries called Gilder and Florin. They're not around anymore because, yay, Europe and Europe's issues. But at one time, Gilder and Florin were these two countries that were really powerful that were there, and they sort of phased out. Now, thank you. Did he have to harass you the whole time?
No.
Okay.
Only that I was killing him.
Well, yeah, probably.
Why?
Because he didn't have any like
New ones? Alright, so hang on.
Like 5
Go
hours. He was
to...
giving out a test.
I gave you one, and you need one. And
So
then
you
I
still
get
have
this
to
one
go there
back to
after
you.
class? You still have to go there after class?
Yeah.
Good job, Kuntz. I appreciate it.
I have an opportunity of torture.
Good. Still ignoring you and Rice. And so with this one, Princess Bride is actually based on true stories. It's going to be a mockery, if you will, of this real thing between this princess and this king that happened in Florin and Gilder. That happened a long time ago and sort of makes fun of it as we go through. Jackson.
I found a fruit loop on the floor.
Okay.
Rice.
About Shrek. It's
Moving on.
actually
Good sport. So now, with the Princess Bride, as we get into it, I'll tell you now, it's a funny book. The one we're going to get, there's issues with it that are going to be a little bit confusing. It's written by a guy by the name of Simon Morgenstern from like the 1800s or something like that. And then it was rewritten by William Goldman. We are doing the William Goldman version because it's the shorter version. As we're going to get into it, we're going to find out he chopped out like, I don't know, 600 to 800 pages of the original version to give us this one right here. Because this is the better version. And we'll get into why coming up.
Did you read
S. Morgenstern, the original version, the humor in it, you might not get it. It depends. If you find me at all amusing in class, my humor comes from Simon Morgenstern, the guy who originally did it. His humor is where he makes fun of things. And so that sort of inspired how I did things. William Goldman, the guy who rewrote it, does that same thing. He was also inspired by Morgenstern, and he also sort of creates humor by making fun of things. Also, if you've ever seen Monty Python and stuff like that,
Oh my God, that's
they're
so good.
similar along that same level of humor. If you don't find things like that funny, then you're probably not going to find a whole lot of this funny. But for the most part, it's okay to laugh during this because that's the goal of it. That's why I saved it for the end. Kuntz. Right. Holly.
My shorts is longer than yours.
Right. And Harvey.
Can I use the restroom?
Sure. Points?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Why am I getting an explanation?
All you do is look at me and go, have. So I ignored
What's
you.
happening?
Olivia.
Remember how I broke your other book?
Uh-huh.
This is like that.
What?
Right. So now we're going to go ahead and get into it. You've also brought me a gift. So many issues. Kuntz, we're talking about our new book.
No, but like, what about it?
Ty, Harmony, Marar. Come grab your pass and head down there. They're going to talk about the fact that
It's about fat.
That
The
no
facts
one
thing.
listens to announcements.
that apparently you guys, none of you went down for the meeting this morning.
Okay, so here's what happened.
Our
Shh,
science class
it's okay.
is really
Our
loud.
class doesn't listen to the announcements.
Like the part where the teacher said shh and you kept going.
Our teacher
No, she
wasn't
wasn't in
there.
there.
No, I'm talking about right now.
Oh, well,
Where I
that's
said shh
important.
and you kept going. We're introducing you a new book.
No, but like, what about it?
I can't go
Everybody's
back
talking about
over.
Shrek and like stuff that I
So
got
now-
in the video.
2 countries, a lot of problems.
Here's my issue. I don't have a lot of time because we have a lot of book to get through. So I'm trying to be speedy because we're going to try and get to a certain checkpoint as fast as possible to get there. So that's why I'm trying to push through and not recap things. I do have a video you could watch later. See, and I don't want to take time to explain things. Guess who's going to win? So here, there is an introduction to it. I am going to be reading the introduction to you because we have to. If not, the book does not make sense. I did take a year where we did not read the introduction and went jump straight into The Princess Bride. Problem is, it makes The Princess Bride confusing, as you'll find out when we get into it. And it ended up being an epic failure of a year. And so as we tried to go through, we ended up having to stop our Princess Bride halfway through, go back and read the introduction, and then continue. So yes, it'll make more sense as we get into it. The good news is, There's 3 introductions. We're not reading the first 2. We're going to skip to the last introduction. So you're going to get to, it'll all make sense when we get there. Trust me.
What page?
So you're going to go to, there's one that says 30th anniversary introduction. We're going to skip that one, unless you've seen the movie. If you've seen the movie, it's worth reading because it gives you background on the actors and the making of the movie. And it's got some really fun stuff in there. But not everyone's seen the movie, so you're going to keep skipping. And eventually you're going to get to the introduction to the 25th anniversary edition. We're skipping that one also. But that's going to be another one that has really cool stuff about the movie. You're going to keep going until all the Roman letters, the XVs and the Ls and the Ms and the Is and the IVs, keep going past all of those, past the part where it talks about Andre the Giant playing Fezzik and stuff like that. So eventually you're going to get to the one that says again, The Princess Bride.
And that's the one we're reading.
And you're going to turn to the next page and it says, this is my favorite book in all the world. That's the one we're going to actually be starting with.
Read it?
You are correct. So, to help you out, this is going to get confusing. And then it's going to get more confusing. And then it's going to get painfully confusing. And then it's going to make sense.
Yay!
I have spent 7 months this year building up trust with you. Until this moment now, when I go, trust me, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to get you there. Just come along with this journey.
It's like the rope pipe.
So what happened is there was a book called The Princess Bride by S. Morgenstern from way back in the 1800s. It's a book no one cares about. William Goldman came along, and we're going to find out he's the one that made it popular again and sort of did a different new version of it. So we're reading the William Goldman version of S. Morgenstern's book, The Princess Bride. Mr. Brovicast, I'm already confused. That's too bad, because that was the easy part. It's only going to get worse. So now we're going to get into the part where he's sort of giving you a background on why he did this whole thing. Is it really important? Actually, yes. Without it, the rest of the book's not going to make sense.
Okay.
Once again, 7 months. Trust me.
I don't trust you.
I'm okay with that.
It's really only been 7 months.
I know, right?
Crazy. Feels like 4
That's a lot. Too long.
This is my... Oh, by the way, before we get into it, William, there's a nickname for William. Like Jonathan becomes
Billy.
Johnny. It's Billy. And apparently kids didn't realize that. Because we get into the book and he keeps referring to himself as Billy. And they're like, who's the new character? I'm like, that's not a new character. That's just a nickname. Like you have Johnny for Jonathan. Billy is the nickname for William.
But why?
Why?
I didn't make up the name. It's just the way it works out.
They're called Willie.
So,
William.
Eddie.
Why is it Billy and not Will? Or Will?
This is my favorite book in all the world, though I've never read it. Okay, how is such a thing possible? I'll do my best to explain. As a child, I had simply no interest in books. I hated reading. I was very bad at it. And besides, how could you take the time to read when there were games that shrieked for playing? Basketball, baseball, marbles. I could never get enough. I wasn't even good at them. But give me a football and an empty playground, and I could invent last-second triumphs that would bring tears to your eyes. School was torture. Miss Roginski, who was my teacher for the 3rd through 5th grades, would have meeting after meeting with my mother. I don't feel Billy is perhaps extending himself quite as much as he might. Or, when we test him, Billy does really exceptionally well, considering his class standing. Or most often, I don't know, Mrs. Goldman. What are we going to do about Billy? Okay, quick pause. This is William Goldman doing a flashback, telling you how he first found the book. So he's sort of going back in time, telling you how he first found The Princess Bride. He's talking about when he was in school as a wee little kid. He hated reading. What are we going to do about Billy? That was the phrase that haunted me those first 10 years. I pretended not to care, but secretly, I was petrified. Everyone and everything was passing me by. I had no real friends and no single person who shared an equal interest in all games. I seemed busy, but I suppose, if pressed, I might have admitted that for all my frenzy, I was very much alone. What are we going to do about you, Billy? I don't know, Miss Roginski. How could you have failed this reading test? I've heard you use every word with my own ears. I'm sorry, Miss Roginski. I must not have been thinking. You're always thinking, Billy. You just weren't thinking about the reading test. I could only nod. What was it this time? I don't know. I can't remember. Was it Stanley Hack again? Now, Stan Hack was the Cubs' third baseman for these and many other years. Now, I saw him play once from a bleacher seat, and even at that distance, he had the sweetest smile I'd ever seen. And to this day, I swear he smiled at me several times. I just worshipped him. He could also hit a ton. No, it was Bronco Nagurski. He's a football player, a great football player. And the paper last night said he might come back and play for the Bears again. He retired when I was little, but if he came back and I could get someone to take me to a game, I could see him play. And maybe if I ever took him, also knew him, I could meet him after. And maybe if he was hungry, I might let him have a sandwich I might have brought with me. I was trying to figure out what kind of sandwich Bronco Nagurski would like. Another quick pause. You might not know this, but some kids have trouble paying attention in class, and that was William Goldman. So instead of paying attention in class, he was imagining if he were to meet a famous football player, what sandwich he would give him if the football player wanted to have a sandwich. And so that was where his brain was going. And probably right now, some of you are tuning me out trying to think of what sandwich you would give to a football player if given the option. And the answer is salami and Swiss. And you'll have to wait.
Thank you.
She just sagged at her desk. You've got a wonderful imagination, Billy. I don't know what I said. Probably thank you or something. I can't harness it, though. Why is that? Oh, I think it's that probably I need glasses. And I don't read because the words are so fuzzy. That would explain why I'm all the time squinting. Maybe if I went to an eye doctor who could give me glasses, I'd be the best reader in class, and you wouldn't have to keep me after school so much. She just pointed behind her. Get to work cleaning the blackboards, Billy. That was when you had to wash and clean all the blackboards. It was her version of the Simpsons sheet. Get to work cleaning the blackboards, Billy. Yes, ma'am. I was the best at cleaning blackboards. Do they look fuzzy? Miss Roginski said after a while. Huh? Oh, no, I just made that up. I never squinted either, but she just seemed so whipped about it. She always did. This had been going on for 3 grades now. I'm just not getting through to you somehow. It's not your fault, Miss Roginski. It wasn't. I just worshipped her, too. She was all dumpy and fat, but I used to wish she'd been my mother. I could never make that really come out right, unless she'd been married to my father first, and then they'd gotten divorced. And my father had married my mother, which was okay, because Miss Roginski had to work, so my father got custody of me, and that all made sense, only they never seemed to know each other, my dad and Miss Roginski. Whenever they'd meet each year during the Christmas pageant, when all the parents came, I'd watch the two of them like crazy, hoping for some kind of secret glimmer or look that could only mean, well, how are you? How's your life been going since our divorce? But no soap. She wasn't my mother. She was just my teacher, and I was her own personal and growing disaster area. Quick pause again, because I'm sure that got confusing. His teacher is not his mom. He just wishes that she was, because he has a really strong imagination, because he really likes his teacher. And so he was trying to imagine how she could have been his mom, but then his parents would have got divorced. He goes on these little tangents with his brain where he imagines things. Caleb?
Okay, so you brought up the Bears, they were a good team. They used to not suck.
You're going to be all right, Billy. I sure hope so, Miss Roginski. You're a late bloomer, that's all. Winston Churchill was a late bloomer, and so are you. I was about to ask her who he played for, but there was something in her tone that made me know enough not to. And Einstein. Him, I also didn't know. Or what a late bloomer was either. But boy, did I ever want to be one. So now, in our flashback, we're going to have a flash forward. So now we're flashing forward in our flashback. When I was 26, my first novel, The Temple of Gold, was published by Alfred A. Knopf, which is now part of Random House, which is now part of RCA, which is just part of what's wrong with publishing in America today, which is not even part of the story. Anyway, before publication, the publicity people at Knopf were talking to me, trying to figure out what they could do to justify their salaries, and they asked, who did I want to send advanced copies to that might be an opinion maker? And I said, I didn't know anybody like that. And they said, think. Everybody knows somebody. And so I got all excited because the idea just came to me. And I said, ooh, okay, send a copy to Miss Roginski. which I figure was logical and terrific, because if anybody made my opinions, she did. She's all through the Temple of Gold, by the way, only I called her Miss Patulski. Even then, I was creative. Who? This publicity lady said. This old teacher of mine. Send her a copy, and I'll sign it, and maybe write a little... I was really excited until the publicity guy interrupted with, we were thinking of someone more on the national scene. Pause again. What they're talking about here is if you turn to like the very front of your book, it has those little blurbs from famous people like, you'll love this book because it's the best in the world. The idea is when the author writes it, you send it to other famous people and they write a blurb about how cool your book is. So they asked him, what famous person do you want to send this book to so we can have a blurb at the front of the book? And he said, my 3rd grade teacher.
3rd through 5th.
3rd through 5th. Nicely done. We were thinking of someone more on the national scene. Very soft. I said, Miss Roginski, just send her a copy, please. Okay? Yeah, he said. Yeah, by all means. You remember how I didn't ask who Churchill played for because of her tone? I must have hit that same tone too just then. Anyway, something must have happened because he right away wrote her name down, asking, was it Ski or Sky? With the I? I told him. Already hiking through the years, trying to get the inscription fantastic for her. You know, clever and modest and brilliant and perfect, like that. First name? That brought me back fast. I didn't know her first name. Miss was all I ever called her. I didn't know her address either. I didn't even know if she was alive or not. I hadn't been back to Chicago in 10 years. I was an only child. Both folks gone. Who needed Chicago? Send it to Highland Park Grammar School, I said. And first, what I thought I'd write was, for Miss Roginski, a rose from your late bloomer. But then I thought that was too conceited. So I decided, for Miss Roginski, a weed from your late bloomer would be more humble. Okay, no, that's too humble. I decided next, and that was it for bright ideas that day. I couldn't think of anything. And then I thought, what if she doesn't even remember me? Hundreds of students over the years. Why should she? So finally, in desperation, I put, for Miss Roginski, from William Goldman. Billy, you called me, and you said be a late bloomer, and this book is for you, and I hope you like it. I was in your class for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. Thank you very much. William Goldman. The book came out and got bombed. I stayed in and did the same, adjusting. Do you guys, what does that mean? How does this book do?
Good.
Poorly.
Horribly. So what did he do?
He stayed inside. He took to the...
He channeled his inner Dionysus. Not only did it not establish me as the freshest thing since Kit Marlowe, it also did not get read by anybody. Okay, not true. It got read by any number of people. It was just all of whom I knew. I think it's safe to say, however, no strangers savored it. It was a grinding experience, and I reacted as indicated above. So when Miss Roginski's note came, late, it got sent to Knopf, and they took their time relaying it. I was really ready for a lift. Dear Mr. Goldman, thank you for the book. I have not had time yet to read it, but I am sure it is a fine endeavor. I, of course, remember you. I remember all my students. Yours sincerely, Antonia Roginski. What a crusher. She didn't remember me at all. I sat there holding the note, rocked. People don't remember me. Really. I mean, it's not a paranoid thing. I just have this habit of slipping through memories. It doesn't bother me all that much, except, I guess that's a lie. It does. For some reason, I test very high on forgettability. So when Miss Roginski sent me that note, making her just like everyone else, I was glad she never got married. I never liked her anyway. She'd always been a rotten teacher, and it served her right her first name was Antonia. Huh, I didn't mean it, I said out loud right then. I was alone in my one-room apartment on Manhattan's glamorous west side, talking to myself. I'm sorry, I went on. You've got to believe that, Miss Roginski. What had happened, of course, was that I'd finally seen the postscript. It was on the back of the thank you note, and what it said was, idiot. Not even the immortal S. Morgenstern could feel more parental than I. S. Morgenstern, the Princess Bride. She remembered. Flashback. 2 quick pauses. 1, I hope someday that you guys get to write me a note with your first book, and I get to call you idiots also.
Hi.
Yes. And I also look forward to not remembering all of you.
Wait, what's
Now,
idiot?
because you'll find out they have that kind of relationship where she gets to sass him all the time. It's a relationship that some teachers have with students where they just get to sass the kids.
So,
Hi.
Someday you'll have a teacher like that, you'll understand. So now, we're going to have a flashback
day-to-day.
inside of his flash forward. That's inside of the flashback.
this makes no sense. It makes sense.
It totally makes...
It makes sense. I just don't understand why he would do it.
Flashback. 1941. Autumn. I'm a little cranky because my radio won't get the football games. Northwestern's playing Notre Dame. It starts at 1, and by 1:30, I can't get the game. Music, news, soap operas, everything, but not the biggie. I call for my mother. She comes in. I tell her, my radio's busted. I can't find Northwestern Notre Dame. She says, do you mean the football? Yeah. I say, it's Friday, she says. I thought they played on Saturday. Am I an idiot? I lay back, listening to the soaps, and after a little bit, I try finding it again. And my stupid radio will pick up every Chicago station except the one carrying the football game. Oh, I really holler now. And again, my mother tears in. I'm going to heave this radio right out the window, I say. It won't get it. It won't get it. I cannot make it get it. Get what? She says. The football game, I say. How dumb are you? The game? Saturday. You watch your tongue, young man. I already told you, it's Friday. She goes out again. Was there ever so ample a dunce? Humiliated, I flick around on my trusty Zenith radio trying to find the football game. It was so frustrating. I was lying there sweating, and my stomach felt crazy, and I was pounding the top of the radio to make it work right, and that was how they discovered I was delirious with pneumonia. Pneumonia is an illness that you get that gives you a really bad high fever. Yeah, it basically makes you go into you become stupid. The fever basically cooks your brain. And so that's how they found out he had pneumonia, because he kept trying to find the football game and got delirious from it. Yes.
Who was he talking to?
His mom. That's why he said mom.
So one part I missed.
Important bits. Pneumonia today is not what it once was, especially when I had it. 10 days or so in the hospital and then home for the long recuperating period. I guess it was 3 more weeks in bed, a month maybe. No energy, no games even. I just was this lump going through a strength gathering time, period. Which is how you have to think of me when I came upon The Princess Bride. It was my first night home, drained, still one sick cookie. My father came in. I thought to say goodnight. He sat on the end of my bed. Chapter 1, The Bride, he said. It was then, only I kind of looked up and saw he was holding a book.
Oh, wait, that's the movie.
In the movie, they worked in parts of the introduction because William Goldman, you'll find out later, sort of works himself into the retelling of things. So that's why we're reading the introduction, because it pops up in the movie also. It makes sense. Can't hear you. That alone was surprising. My father was next to illiterate in English. He came from Florin, the setting of The Princess Bride, and there he had been no fool. He had said once he would have ended up a lawyer, and maybe so. The facts are, when he was 16, he got a shot at coming to America, gambled on the land of opportunity, and lost. There was never much here for him. He was not attractive to look upon, very short, and from an early age, bald. And he was ponderous at learning. Once he got a fact, it stayed. But the hours it took to pass into his cranium were not to be believed. His English always stayed ridiculously immigrantry, and that didn't help him either. He met my mother on the boat over, got married later, and when he thought they could afford it, had me. He worked forever as the number 2 chair in the least successful barbershop in Highland Park, Illinois. Toward the end, he used to doze all day in his chair. He died that way. He was gone an hour before the number 1 guy realized it. Until then, he just thought my father was having a good doze. Maybe he was. Maybe that's all any of this is. When they told me, I was terribly upset. But I thought at the same time, it was almost an existence proving way for him to go. Anyway, I said, huh? What? I didn't hear. I was so weak, so terribly tired. And there we stop.
Okay.
Tomorrow.